Hey folks, this is Riker, and every game you were looking forward to in 2020 has been delayed. In this week's gaming wrap-up video, we're going to talk about a number of titles who've had their release dates pushed back. We're going to revisit the whole Path of Exile trading discussion. We'll give an update on what's going on in the world of Diablo, and more. As always, discussion timestamps can be found in the video description below, but right before you skip ahead, just a quick reminder to ring that sub notification bell to be alerted of new Saturday episodes and stay up to date with gaming news highlights. Now, in our first story, we're going to very quickly talk about the Witcher Netflix series. If you have not already seen season 1, I encourage you to skip ahead to our next topic. Spoilers ahead. Alright, now for those of us who watched season 1, a lot of us became confused at some point, especially within the first few episodes, before we realized that we were seeing multiple stories happening in multiple timelines. Now, if you were paying very close attention, the show does have a number of clues that allowed you to pick up on this aspect of the story very early on, but I think most of us only clued in after a couple episodes. Well, Netflix has now released an interactive timeline map to help guide you through the first few episodes and really understand, okay, what's happening in which episode when. I'll pop a link to that in the video description below. But one thing I've seen mentioned is that some people wished that the showrunners had put subtitles when changing scene to show what time period the given scene takes place in. And my question to you folks is, do you think that would have been a good idea? Would it have added to the experience? It certainly would have clarified things and rendered things less confusing. But do you think there was an intent for us to be a little confused, or at least a little surprised when we eventually put the pieces together and realized this story was not all happening at the same time? Personally, I generally like those aha moments where you put things together and it's a nice surprise reveal. But I do wonder if in this particular case it justified the confusion that it caused certain viewers. Alright, on to some Horizon Zero Dawn news. According to some reputable sources, this game will be coming to PC this year. First launched as a PS4 exclusive in 2017, Horizon Zero Dawn was met with critical acclaim. It's an open-world, post-apocalyptic game in which you fight robot dinosaurs. And I remember being a game that I wish I could have played on PC. Well, now, according to Kotaku's Jason Schreier, who's been a reputable source for insider information, according to 3 of his sources, the game will be coming to PC this year. In other news, we got a new trailer for Doom Eternal. This game is looking really cool, and I especially like the extra lore focus that we seem to be seeing with it. This trailer makes the campaign seem very story-focused, but it's still clearly jam-packed full of demon slaying. Doom Eternal is slated to launch on March 20th. In other news, we got a new trailer for the upcoming remake of Resident Evil 3, Nemesis. Set to launch on April 3rd, this remake is looking really good. And speaking of remakes, it was announced this week that the long-awaited Final Fantasy VII Remake is being delayed. It's not a huge delay, simply from March to April 10th. But it does mean that those excited to wield the Buster Sword again have to wait just a little longer. In related news, on the same day that it was announced that Final Fantasy VII would be pushed back, it was also announced that Marvel's Avengers will be pushed back to September 4th. Now, while this may just be coincidental, it is noteworthy that both these games fall under the purview of Square Enix. In general, it's the publishers that push the developers to get games out as soon as possible, or at the very least meet their deadlines, and it's the developer that begs for more time. So is it just a coincidence that both these games announced delaying their release dates on the same day? Or is this part of some grander plan by Square Enix to restructure the release dates of its upcoming games? And in other news, Cyberpunk 2077 has also been delayed. Originally set to release in April, it has now been delayed to September 17th. CD Projekt Red's joint CEO Adam Kaczynski confirms that despite this delay, the devs will still be put under crunch. During a Q&A question, when asked whether there would be a crunch period, he stated, quote, "To some degree, yes, to be honest. We try to limit crunch as much as possible, but it is the final stage. We try to be reasonable in this regard, but yes, unfortunately." Now, in recent years, we've heard a lot of stories about crunch in the AAA gaming industry. As deadlines grow closer and closer, devs are made to work long periods of overtime, sometimes lasting months. This leads to increased rates of depression and burnout. And while CD Projekt Red has a great reputation when it comes to being consumer-friendly, it doesn't exactly have a stellar reputation with being developer-friendly. Now, in October 2019 at PAX Aus, CD Projekt Red Krakow boss John Mamay told GameSpot that their work environment isn't for everyone. Quote, "You sacrifice some things to do that and be part of that. There are a lot of people who come into the industry that are fresh. They don't really understand what it takes to do it. So we get a lot of new guys coming in and they go, oh god, this is like too much. But then we have other guys come in from Rockstar Games and they're like, this is not even crunch. We're doing the best we can to keep the work under control. But sometimes when you're doing some big-ass game like this, it's not always possible to do that. It takes really hard work to make it really awesome." Now, it appears that this crunch culture developed because there's this sentiment that it should be a privilege to work for a AAA developer. It should be a privilege to work as a game developer, period. This is a dream job and thus you should be expected to sacrifice. Now, I won't even get into the absolute lack of compassion that a comment like that suggests, so I'll instead opt for the more utilitarian argument and ask, do we really expect the best quality of games to come from overworked, exhausted, absolutely stressed out people? Now, I don't believe any singular developer is at fault here. Crunch has become a reality across the industry, and as the industry becomes increasingly profit-driven, it becomes difficult to imagine how this will ever change. Now, we've already covered a few game delays in this video, but these just add to a pile of 2020 game delays that were previously revealed. Watch Dogs Legion was delayed from March 3rd, 2020 to the 2021 fiscal year, which means anytime starting April 2020 all the way to March 31st, 2021. Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Quarantine originally had a early 2020 launch window, now fiscal year 2021. Gods and Monsters, originally February 25th, 2020, now fiscal year 2021. The Last of Us 2, originally slated for February 21st, now releasing in May. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, originally slated for the first quarter of 2020, now sometime later in the year. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remaster, January 2020, pushed back to summer 2020. Kerbal Space Program 2, originally slated for the fiscal year 2020, now fiscal year 2021. Ori and the Will of the Wisps went from February 11th to March, and Wolcen went from late January to February 13th. It was originally looking like early 2020 was going to be packed full of exciting game releases, but now things seem to be staggered a little better. Alright, on to some Path of Exile news. The devs released a blog post with their development plan for 2020. They stated that they do plan to release 4 expansions this year, with the first probably to be announced in late February. They stated, quote, "We expect that the next time we'll show significantly new content and features, for PoE 4.0, will probably be in the middle of this year, maybe around E3, and they reaffirmed that the earliest we'll likely see a beta for 4.0 will be in late 2020. And with the year 2020 now well underway, it seems it's time for our annual discussion on trade in PoE. Redditor PM5K wrote up an open letter to GGG. It is very long, but very well written and well thought out. He states that the trade experience pretty much has not improved since the year 2013, despite the game itself evolving in many ways and improving since then. He flat out states that trading is a horrible user experience, and highlights among other issues that it's too easy to get scammed. He points out how it's fallen to the community to come up with resources that make trading easier, faster, safer, and more automated. Redditor Glael suggested as a solution the ability to set up a vendor in your hideout. Basically, you list items for sale as you normally would, but then when someone wants to purchase from you, rather than have to interact with you directly, they just come to your hideout and interact with the vendor to purchase the item. Now, ultimately, the issue is that trading is not difficult because GGG can't figure out how to make it easier. The fact is they don't want to make it easier. That's their design decision. As Redditor Nixt9 points out, quote, "Every single time you decrease the friction in trading, you are lowering the opportunity cost of trading and therefore indirectly increasing the opportunity cost of mapping or delving or gameplay. In essence, what he's talking about is the Diablo 3 auction house problem, where it became increasingly efficient to gear up through the auction house rather than through playing the game itself. GGG balances trading by making it cumbersome, so that you are incentivized to play the game in order to acquire items, because if it's too easy to trade, then you'll just trade your way to the best items very quickly. Now I turn the question to you folks, how do you feel about this? And has your opinion ever changed? Were you ever on one side of the camp and then you moved over to the other? For instance, perhaps this was less of an issue when PoE was a smaller game, but as it's grown, has it become a bigger issue? Personally, while I would absolutely love to see trading made better from a user experience, I do fear that if it becomes too easy, will that overtake actual gameplay. Lastly, onto some Diablo news. Path of Diablo will be starting its 9th season on January 24th. This is a Diablo 2 mod that focuses on quality of life features, increasing build diversity and replayability while trying to stay as true as possible to the original Diablo 2 experience. What likely involves the biggest departure from D2 is that it adds a form of endgame mapping system similar to Path of Exile. As always, links in the video description. In other news, forum community MVP Miss Cheetah pointed us to a new job posting for a Diablo community manager, but reassures us that this is not to replace existing community manager Brandy, but to bring on an additional community manager. As a reminder, during the early 2019 job cuts at Activision Blizzard, 2 of the 3 Diablo community managers were laid off. Now, this job posting specifies Diablo and then has as a requirement, quote, experience working on mobile games and managing and growing mobile gaming communities. So, it does seem like this will be for Diablo Immortal. Now, speaking of Brandy, a new post of hers on the Diablo forums hints that the team might be looking for ideas on what builds to bring back into favor. Quote, what other non-traditional builds do you all enjoy? I'd love to read more about what skills and skill combinations you find fun, even if they aren't competitive for pushing. We know that the team is looking to keep things fresh in Diablo 3 from season to season. Balancing or updating old items to bring old builds or unconventional builds into favor is a relatively straightforward way to do this. And we also know that they're adding a new class set for every class, with the Monk and Crusader already having received theirs. So I turn the question to you folks, what new builds would you like to see emerge, or what existing builds would you like to see buffed into viability? Sound off in the comments. And that is going to wrap up this week's video. But do be sure to have checked out the latest episode in our Diablo lore series, which went live yesterday. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rikers Raiders for more gaming content.